Hey, Chung here from the Shoot as well, or you know me as T. Today's guest is Coach Liz Mills. She's predominantly a coach in African basketball, but instead of hearing from me, let's go straight to the horse's mouth. I'm not calling you a horse, but that's the saying. Coach Mills, just give the viewers an understanding of where you've coached and I guess your involvement in basketball up to today.
So I started playing basketball when I was 15 and then started coaching when I was 16. I coached and played at Northern Suburbs Basketball Association in North Sydney, Australia. And I coached juniors and youth league women, which is under 21. So I coached at North for about 5 to 6 years. And then in 2011, I started coaching men's club teams and national teams in Africa. Between the periods of 2011 and 2020, I've worked with men's clubs teams in Zambia, Namibia, Kenya, South Africa, and Rwanda. And I've worked with the senior men's national team for Cameroon for the World Cup qualifiers.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Just shout out to Lloyd. He couldn't join us today, but he pretty much did all the research on yourself. So
thank you.
Let's get through your career, or like just your career.
Yeah.
First thing I asked is, Lloyd was getting into your career, and you just mentioned it. There was a change from netball to basketball, so we see that. Was there an initial, I guess, change, being able to move freely on the court, adding dribble and shooting in your game, rather than netball where you just got to pass and stop?
Oh, exactly. I think, I played goal attack. So for me, it was changing my shooting form and that freedom of actually being able to move around a lot more with being able to dribble, etc. So I think really basketball offered a freedom that netball doesn't have, and you don't have to specialize in either defense or shooting or being a mid-court player in terms of being a center or wing attack, etc. So I think that freedom and also the technical aspect of basketball is a lot more exciting than netball. And when we moved across, my sister and I have always been grateful that we made the move. But in netball's defense, like high-level netball, their passing ability and their anticipation skills are far superior than anything you see on a basketball court.
I'm more surprised about, I guess, netball injuries in terms of knees and stuff, and ACLs even too, because they're stopping on a dime. Like that's pretty much, yeah.
It's brutal, yeah. That ankle injuries, jarred fingers, especially knees, your ACL, MCL, LCL injuries are all prevalent just because it's that abrupt stop. When really they are actually allowed to take that one step, but for some reason, especially not at that elite level, you'll see those kind of injuries more predominantly.
Sure. Shout out to all netball players, basketball, sport. So we'll move on to the next one. So you played rep juniors and seniors in North, as you mentioned, and eventually you coach. Initially, what was the experience like coaching juniors, then the youth league women's under 21s?
Well, my sister and I both started coaching, as I said previously, when we were about 16 at North. And I think what's really rewarding as a junior coach is seeing that skill acquisition and development, as well as the character development of your players as they age. And especially with, say, youth league women, I think being part of the development of strong, independent sportswomen is a journey worth taking part in. And I'll always really cherish those memories. Unfortunately, I haven't worked with juniors for about 10 years, but I still vividly remember how rewarding it is to coach at that level.
Awesome. So was volunteer coaching always something that you wanted to compete? As a fellow coach, this is Lloyd's words, I know that your dedicated requirement was Africa, something that you intrigued in terms of furthering your coaching career.
Definitely. Well, my sister and I have a passion for history, politics and travel. And so Africa has always been a destination we wanted to go to. As with all junior coaches, you volunteer your time, effort and resources when you begin your career. And so it just seemed natural, Africa, volunteering, coaching, let's do it. And so when we both finished our undergrad degrees, we decided to do some volunteering in Africa, and we worked with a not-for-profit called Beyond Sports Integrated in Lusaka, Zambia. And so we were using sport and coaching as a vehicle to work with young kids and adults impacted by HIV/AIDS, and using sport as a vehicle to discuss healthy lifestyle choices. And that was a really rewarding experience. And since I have done a lot of volunteer work with senior club teams and national teams between the periods of 2011 and 2017. So majority of the coaching I've done in Africa is on a volunteer basis. And so I think if anybody's thinking of volunteering, I would highly recommend the African experience because it's very rewarding.
Awesome. State Heroes Play United gave you a shot at running a training session. What was the first experience like, and what was some of the things you wanted to complete in that session? Was it getting a feel for their playing ability, their skills, or maybe it was athleticism and understanding of the game?
Okay. I first saw Heroes Play United at the opening tournament of the Men's Super League in Lusaka, Zambia in 2011. What I really liked about this team is they played really hard, had good chemistry with no major superstars, and they had a lot of potential. They didn't win the tournament or anything. They kind of were middle of the pack. And so I thought they'd be a perfect team to approach in terms of running a training session. So I ended up asking them if I could run the first half of their practice, and that turned into me running their full practice and coming back the next day and working with them for the rest of the season. So I think all I remember is being really nervous. It was actually coached a men's team. Not a lot of opportunities in Australia for women to work with men's teams. So I didn't tell them that though. And so, it was quite a successful season for us. So I'm very glad I approached them to work with them.
Awesome. I guess you pretty much have to put yourself out there if you want to achieve anything, and get the shot and opportunity. Sure. So, national championship. What was the feeling like with winning with Heroes Play United, and also the other club? Is it Matero Magic? Matero Magic.
Matero.
Yep.
Matero Magic.
Matero Magic. Yep.
So Heroes hadn't won a championship in about 8 years, and so when we made playoffs, we were like the surprise package. We just snuck in the 4th spot. In the semi-finals, we had to beat the league champions, and then in the finals, we had to defeat the national champions, the defending champions. So no one expected us to win anything.
Yep. Was that a 1 versus 4 matchup?
Yeah, they did 2 versus 4, 1 versus 3, which okay. I have no idea why anybody would do that, but that's how they did it.
Yep.
So, or maybe they did, Pacers were league champions, so they would have done 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3. 4.
Yeah. So then the top team gets the lower seed team. They have the most.
Exactly.
Which you upset.
Yeah. So we both the 2 teams in Zambia were Matero Magic and Unza Pacers, and so we met Unza in the semi-finals and then Matero in the finals. And I think it's one of my most rewarding experiences as a coach is to work with that team, and it's still one of my greatest achievements as a coach. Whereas then on the flip side, in I think it was 2015, I worked with Matero Magic, who Heroes had beaten in that final, and I was specifically brought in to coach in the playoffs, and so I didn't have that in-depth relationship that I had with my Heroes players, and therefore that coaching gig really felt like a job rather than, rather than an experience. And so when we won the championship, It was very much a tick. Yep, I did my job.
Yeah, it was pretty much what you had to do. That's what they hired you for. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Phil Jackson type of coach. Come in, get the championship. That's it.
And I'm out. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, awesome. So myself and Lloyd really admire your drive for seeking more from the top tier teams and approaching them yourself, as we just talked about.
Yep.
How did you approach that team, like Cameroon, to try to work your way into the coaching staff?
Well, I spent a good majority of my time coaching in Zone 6, which is Southern Africa. In 2017, I worked with the Zambian men's national team for Zone 6 Afrobasket qualifiers. For those who don't know, Afrobasket is the premier continental title. It's similar to Eurobasket, and the championship of that goes on to World Cup or Olympics before we implemented the new FIBA system. So one of my goals as a coach has always been to coach at Afrobasket. So when Zambia failed to qualify, I had to reassess and go, okay, I need to be working with the top tier teams in Africa in order to get that dream running, basically. So what I did in 2017 is I started to work on my analytical skills, and I decided that if I was going to approach these teams, I needed to have a unique skill set. Also, a lot of the top tier teams in Africa have foreign coaches who have very little knowledge of African basketball prior to working with national teams. So my two advantages were my experience coaching in Africa and of African basketball and my data analytics skills. So I decided to, in 2018, I went to Tunisia, who was hosting one of the FIBA World Cup African qualifiers, one of the groups there, and I approached a couple of teams, especially those with foreign coaches, discussing my knowledge regarding African basketball, as well as providing data analytic reports on their team and their opponents. So that's how I ended up working with Cameroon, and I was part of their coaching staff for the second round of World Cup qualifiers.
Awesome. Great story. So a couple of the Cameroon players hitting the NBA currently. Did you get a chance to do any sessions with current African players moving into the NBA or general African players on the rise?
So unfortunately, I haven't had the opportunity to work with any of the current NBA players who are from Africa. With Cameroon, I had the opportunity to work with some former NBA players in Kenneth Kaji, DJ Strawberry, and former G League player Landry Noko. I think what's really exciting is the amount of African players that we now have in the NBA, and I expect in the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to see a tidal wave of talent coming through the league.
Yep. Just get back to your coaching, I guess, experience with Cameroon. Did you take any drill wise or aspects wise from that experience?
I think the number one thing I took out of that experience with Cameroon was working with high caliber professional basketball players. As I have already stated, Cameroon had a number of former NBA players, G League players who now have great careers in Europe. And so getting to work with those that caliber of player was really exciting. Learning how they approach the game and how they fit into a team environment on such a short preparation period was really interesting to see. And from a coaching perspective, it was rather challenging in the fact that the head coach had very little knowledge, interest, or respect for African basketball. So coaching wise, I think what I took out of it was how I would handle things differently and how I would not make the same mistakes. Not every experience is going to be a good experience, and so you try and learn as much as you can from every experience you get.
Yeah, definitely. It's the saying goes where you just play with the hand you're dealt, like in a cards game. So you make the most of it. That's pretty much what I get out of that, for sure. Yeah. So let's move on to I guess scouting video work. How did you get into that? I see that you're currently advising for the ABL African teams in Africa. Is something that you learned or on the go, or was it someone that chose you, like mentored you for that?
As I previously mentioned, analytics is really an untapped and undervalued resource in African basketball. So in 2017, I kind of went out of my way to teach myself the advanced stats formulas, and I have since gone on to build huge spreadsheets for each national team or club team. And so I have that data now at my fingertips. And with that data, I have been able to consult with teams who have previously played in the African Basketball League, which was run by FIBA Africa, as well as teams in the Basketball Africa League qualifiers and national teams in AfroCan tournament that was in 2019. So I think what's great about that skill set is it means that I don't necessarily have to fly to work with that team. I can work with the coaches remotely. And also gives me experiences working with teams outside my own. So I was able to work with a Tunisian club team, a Ugandan national team, etc. So in terms of videoing, that when I came back to Australia to do my master's in coaching in 2013, I was able to work with a coach here, Rex Nottage from Newington Boys High School, and he introduced me to Synergy. And since then I've gone on to use Crossover, and now I kind of cut my own film. And so that's a skill set that I can bring to a team that I'm working with.
That's awesome. When you mentioned data, that's pretty important that you can work with teams that are not in person, I guess, especially during this pandemic. Like, with that model that you created, being a fellow nerd, is that something that you would sell on to teams that are interested in your methods?
Yeah, exactly. It is something I've thought about. Unfortunately, a lot of clubs and teams, national teams in Africa, don't have huge budgets. So at the moment, I'm kind of keeping that data to myself and using it for my team's advantage. I do put out a couple of posts across my social media for players to have a look at, because unfortunately FIBA Africa, or FIBA in general actually, doesn't provide any advanced stats. With the Basketball Africa League, the NBA will step in and fill that void. And eventually I would look to sell that data on to other teams, but I think that's more 2 or 3 years down the line.
Yeah, I guess that's something that will be really useful if you had just a data entry. Like if I had a GUI, put in the analytics, and then it comes up with certain things that I need to focus on this player, focus on this team, my strengths and weaknesses, and then head into a competition. You look at your opponents, and then you can scout, and then all those things will match up and makes you a better coach, for sure.
Oh, 100%. And it completely influences your coaching strategy. I'm not saying it solely does.
Yep.
Obviously, scouting still plays a huge role, but numbers do tell a story as well. And I think in terms of especially national teams in Africa, this could be the difference between winning and losing. And so it's a huge advantage for any team that is using it.
Yeah, sure. I think when I was in when I was playing in juniors, and I actually get to tape all my games. That's something that I did. Just look at people's habits, where they want the ball, how they dribble the first time, like the team offense when things get close. These things help you tremendously. Because then when you play them, you know what's coming. Of course, there's always like these things that you can't control, like someone's on fire, someone can't miss a shot, but you're giving yourself the best opportunity to win the game. That's the goal, right?
Especially when you've got a team that has 2 or 3 like major players, and if you can find something to shut 1 or 2 of them down, you know, such an advantage.
Yeah, as a basketball player, you want to be comfortable on the court, and as on defense, you want to make people as uncomfortable as possible. And once you do that, it changes the whole team dynamic the other side, and then they have to scramble and go to plan B if they have a plan B or plan C, and usually by that time the game's over and you usually win. So props
exactly.
So so you noticed saying that you had more opportunities in Africa than Australia. I hear on so many levels. It's kudos to you for it. What is something you're looking for in the next 1 to 2 years, hoping COVID doesn't delay any of these goals?
My goals for the next 2 years include coaching in the Basketball Africa League and at next year's FIBA Afro Basket. Hopefully in Africa, we'll see a reduction in COVID-19 cases and we're able to launch the inaugural Basketball Africa League. This is probably going to be a one-off tournament, and then hopefully in 2021 we can launch an actual league. And then after that, I'm hoping to continue to coach in Africa more on a full-time basis, where I can go from coaching in Basketball Africa League and then coaching at national team tournaments, because after AfroBasket we'll then go into World Cup qualifiers. So that's my 2-year plan.
Oh, awesome. It'll be great to, I guess, follow you through social media for sure.
Thank you.
So FIFA is doing a great job in developing junior level basketball and participation on all nations for basketball. Did the inaugural competitions or the seasons in Africa create opportunities for athletes who are looking to move forward their careers in either the NBA or Europe? And do you have the interaction with the NBA and FIFA in terms of African basketball and creating an entity for those nations?
With the development of the Basketball Africa League by the NBA and FIBA, they are creating opportunities for African players to become professional athletes. And as a byproduct, we'll see professional coaches, better standard of refereeing and officiating, as well as the administration of the league itself. So in terms of opportunities for junior athletes or junior players in Africa, FIBA and the NBA, by providing this league, are providing a pathway for these junior athletes to become senior professional players. So you'll see kids who are playing in local clubs, NBA academies, Basketball Without Border programs, Giants of Africa camps. These kids now have a league that they can aspire to play in, because obviously not everybody's going to be an NBA player or go and play in top tier leagues in Europe. So eventually, I think long term, the goal of this league is to rival EuroLeague and the NBA. But in the meantime, it's going to offer an avenue for junior African players, as well as senior players who are currently playing at clubs right now, to play in a professional league. And that's an exciting thing for everybody in Africa. In terms of working with FIBA and the NBA, I don't work with either of those organizations. I'm completely independent, but I do try my best to provide as much information and data around their tournaments and events so that we can promote African basketball on a more global stage.
Sure, great. We're moving on to, I guess, a couple of the shooters role questions that yeah, quite interesting and a bit more lighter. Let's get into it. So if there was one person, dead or alive, you could ask one question to, who would that be, and what would be the question?
Mine's going to be really left field. I'm a bit of a history buff, so here's a warning. Mine would be the Empress Matilda, who was the Lady of the English. She would have been the first Queen of England back in 1135, but her throne was usurped by her male cousin. She continued to fight for her throne for the next 10 to 15 years until her son claimed the throne. And I think the question I would ask her is, during her battle for the throne, how did she, what drove her and what motivated her to fight for something that was hers in a completely male-dominated society?
Was that subtext to your coaching?
Oh,
you didn't have to answer that question. I'm just
No, look, and because that's 1135, and we're still having to fight for female rights in 2020. So that really, what's obviously a lot of things have changed, but really that female struggle against male patriarchy is still going on.
Yeah, fighting the fight for sure. So the next question was, what would you name a boat if you had one? If you had that one.
Well, carrying on from my previous answer, I would probably call my boat the Queen, purely because my sister and I were named after the Queens of England, Elizabeth and Victoria.
Sure. is part of your name. That's a great name for a bird. So the next one is what is the most useless talent you have?
Oh gosh, several. I would say probably when I was growing up, I learned the flute and then the tenor saxophone. I've since had braces, so I can't really play either, but I'm sure they're both terrible and still very much useless talent.
Sure. All right, so we've come to, I guess, the end. The last question is, nominate a person we should interview on the shoot as well, I guess, and hook us up with whoever you nominate to allow us to contact them.
Okay. I'm going to nominate Emmanuel Malou. Earlier this year, he played for the South Sudanese national team at pre-qualifiers for next year's Afrobasket. I've always been really impressed with how he carries himself on the court, and I've gotten to know him a little bit off the court. He's an impressive young man, and I highly recommend doing an interview with him. I'd love to see him back on the continent with the South Sudanese national team and potentially playing in the Basketball Africa League. Awesome.
Yeah, we'll hit him up for sure. And yeah, if you can introduce us, it would be great. So we're pretty much all done. Did you have any, general advice for, up and coming basketballers looking to play college and looking to go into professional in their careers?
I think I'm going to keep the focus on Africa, and I think there's a lot of avenues that Australian players as well as African Australian players, especially from the South Sudanese community, can look to be playing in, be that for their national teams or the Basketball Africa League. South Sudan had a club team competing in qualifiers for the BAL last year, so I would say the equivalent standard would be NBL 1, with some of the top BAL teams probably dominating NBL 1. Therefore, I would really like to see more Australian players look to Africa as a league that they can play in and thrive in. I can guarantee there'll be a lot more exposure for them playing in the BAL than there would be playing in the Big V, ABA, or even NBL 1. And exposure means that they have the opportunity for a scout to see them, and you don't know what league you can jump to from that.
Yeah, so it's about being in the right place at the right time and being exposure.
Exactly, 100%.
Definitely. And Coach Mills, thank you for being on the channel. Yeah, we appreciate you spending the time. Of course, we're volunteers as yourself, volunteering to be on the show. We're just trying to promote basketball, I guess, in Australia mainly and around the world. So thanks for that.
Well, thanks T for having me. I love what you guys are doing. Keep up the great work.
Cool. Thank you.